Hello everyone and welcome to episode 7 of Summer Tomato Live. Summer Tomato Live is your interactive online classroom where we talk about the topics that you vote are the most important. I'm your host, Daria Pino, creator of the website Summer Tomato, where you can find even more healthy eating tips. Summer Tomato is also where you can go after the show to find any show notes that come up, and I tell you I'm going to post a link. That's where they'll be over at summertomato.com next week. So today is actually a really exciting episode. I'm excited for this. This is our first episode where we have a guest on the show. Today our guest is Travis Saunders from the Obesity Panacea blog, which is an awesome blog. If you guys haven't read it, you should definitely check it out. I'll let Travis introduce himself a little bit, but basically he's a scientist. He's been studying exercise and the impact on health and body weight and all that good stuff, and he's really smart, and I'm really excited to ask him questions because I know stuff about food, but he knows a lot more about exercise. So let's bring him on here. And welcome, Travis. Hopefully this will work.
Hello.
It's not coming up on the screen. Oh, apply. There it is. Woo! Welcome, Travis. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and about Obesity Panacea, and just let everybody who doesn't know you here, let them know who you are.
Okay. So my name is Travis. I'm a PhD student in exercise physiology. So I study the relationship between exercise and body weight, and also exercise and health risks, so things like diabetes risk and heart disease risk. So my master's was in adults, and now my PhD, now I'm studying kids. And my specific area of interest is the relationship between sedentary time, so the amount of time that people spend sitting, and health risk, and especially in kids. So that's my professional stuff. And then Obesity Panacea is a website that's about exercise, diet, obesity, and it sort of started out as a website to debunk sort of weight loss gimmicks. So we did a lot of debunking in the early days. Now it's sort of morphed into just a site mainly about obesity news and research, and also exercise news and research.
Some of your debunking ones were really, really fun. I really liked those. You should bring some of those back occasionally. I liked. I think. Go ahead.
Well, we're trying to do them. It gets kind of depressing because they're so frustrating that these things are being foisted on people. So it gets, when we do too many, it gets a little bit dark. So Peter really likes them because he's a lot more cynical than I am. So he's my co-blogger, and so he likes them, and we kind of go in fits and starts. And then we tried to find some good products that we actually liked, and that was really hard. So we still have them every once in a while, but yeah, a lot less than we used to.
I really liked the one where you like juiced a bunch of oranges. That's still one of my favorite ones. So basically they were trying to show how different it is to drink orange juice than actually eating an orange. And how many oranges went into a glass of orange juice?
I think so. I had a 475 milliliter, which I don't know what that is in quarts. It's like the regular orange juice bottle size, or ounces, whatever your units are in the States. But it's a regular bottle, and it was, I think, 7.5 oranges that it took to get an equivalent amount of juice. So I mean, obviously you never sit down and eat 7.5 oranges, but I could down that juice in like 15 seconds. So
right.
It sort of showed just why it's so easy to consume too many calories when you're drinking them.
Right. And if you could try to talk close into the mic, I'm getting like in and out. I don't know how everybody else is hearing you, but just sometimes goes in and out. Anyway, that's awesome. Yeah, I love your site, and it's been fun. We've been following each other for a couple years now at least, I feel like. Anyway, so I wanted to ask you more about your research on sedentary behavior, because I think there's a lot of confusion over, first of all, what exactly that means, and then also sort of how, why don't you just tell us what it means?
Okay, sure. And I should have said, I probably should have said the URL for a blog, although it's impossible to remember. It's blogs.plos.org/obesitypanacea.
I've got it. I've got it
I'll let you
linked
link
on.
to it
I've got
later,
it linked on the
so we'll
website
never
for
be able
anyone who
to.
wants to see it.
Perfect. Yes, that's right. It's in the blog roll. Perfect. So sedentary behavior. So for years, like for about 50 years, we've known that people who exercise more have reduced risk of most diseases. So you have a lower risk of cancer, of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, pretty much all the major chronic diseases. Your risk is lower if you exercise regularly.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're starting to realize now is that no matter how much you exercise, if you sit more, then you also have increased risk. So let's say you and I both exercise for an hour a day. If I sit for 8 hours a day and you only sit for 4 hours a day, then I'm likely to be at increased risk of things like, again, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, all these bad things. So exercise is still very important, but we're starting to realize that the amount of time you spend sitting is also important. And so back in the day when we talked about somebody being sedentary, it would just mean that they weren't getting enough exercise.
Right.
And now that's not the case. We're trying to separate the two. So on the one hand, we have, are you active or inactive? And that's how much exercise you get. Then on the other hand, we have, are you sedentary or not? And that's how much time you spend sitting. So it's pretty cool. And it's sort of, it's a very new area, but it's fun to do research in it.
You said it's pretty cool, but to me it actually sounds pretty terrifying because I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of my followers are sort of tech geeks, and we sit at the computer. I mean, all scientists. I mean, we're at the lab bench, we're at the computer all day, and and we're talking like not your like 9 to 5. I mean, we're talking 8 a.m. to like midnight. We're working, and maybe you'll break away here and there for an exercise break, but. So like you're basically saying like pretty much everyone in the universe is like sort of at risk because of this.
Yeah, to an extent, no. It's hard to fit exercise into your day. If you want to get that hour of exercise, it takes a lot of time and it takes effort. You need a gym membership or some expertise. You need some skills on how to do the exercises. The nice thing is that sedentary time is really easy to reduce, or at least a lot easier to reduce than getting exercise. So I was writing my comprehensive exams in the fall, so I was doing basically that. I was getting up at 9 and spending 16 straight hours sitting all day, reading about how bad it is to be sitting. I was kind of going crazy. And so now, like, you can probably tell, like, I'm actually standing up right now, and I bought a little $30 pedal machine that goes under my desk. So when I'm working at my desk all day, I'm pedaling. So then there's also research showing that just simply breaking up your sedentary time, so walking to the fountain, walking to the printer, the more often you do that, the healthier you're going to be. So it is kind of scary at first, but at least it's easy to break up that sedentary time and reduce it. So hopefully you can reduce that risk.
That's crazy. All right, so I have something I do actually. Recently, I've started. I moved and I don't really have an official desk anymore, and so I was sitting at the kitchen table, which is actually kind of high, and then I was getting like I call it blogger's elbow, but I'm sure it's some sort of like repetitive stress from having the wrong height desk. So I got rid of my chair and I started. I stand all day now, like all day long. So I'm curious, like, is just standing enough, or do I need to be like walking around?
That's a good question. Nobody really knows. So this has only been the past 8 or 9 years that we've sort of started to realize that sedentary behavior is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's only been the past 2 or 3 years that we've realized that breaking up sedentary time is better than not breaking it up. And so we know that there's a study that just came out that showed that simply standing for 4 hours of the day as opposed to sitting for the full day was enough to improve the insulin response for that day. So standing probably makes a difference, but it's really hard to tell right now. And what it seems to be is that it's not so much the calories you're burning when you're standing, it's that when your muscles aren't being contracted, there are some enzymes that basically shut down. So lipoprotein lipase and glucose transporters just basically shut off. And so by standing, you're stimulating those muscles, and that seems to be what keeps them going. So there have been some cool animal studies where they snip a nerve in an animal's leg, and the levels drop. They electrically stimulate the muscle, and the enzymes turn back on and everything's good. So it seems like standing's probably okay, but nothing's definite just yet.
Mm-hmm. So in that case, then how important does like regular gym exercise become? Because I've actually read plenty of books. One of the early books I read about sort of lifestyle as opposed to diet changes was this book, French Women Don't Get Fat, and one of her like main tenets was French women, we don't put on clothes just to get sweaty. We don't do that. But what we'll do is we'll walk to the store, we'll walk to our friend's house, we'll take the stairs, all this stuff. Do we not need to go to the gym anymore? If you can somehow like abolish the sedentary behavior in your like daily life?
I think, it's hard to say. Remember, the gym is a pretty new thing. It's only been the past 50, 60 years that the gym has existed. So there's been some cool research in Mennonites and Old Order Amish people, and so they don't have gyms, but they're doing activity all day. They don't have cars. They walk everywhere. They're very active, and they are incredibly healthy kids. And the adults too. They're very healthy people. Have very low rates of chronic disease, even though they're not going to the gym. And it's actually funny when they do tests on these kids, they're just off the charts for most strength things, but they can't do push-ups because they don't have any need for doing push-ups because it's such an arbitrary and artificial thing. So I think it's harder for people that live in a big city and it doesn't necessarily fit as well into the everyday lifestyle, but I think there are ways to live more actively just in your day-to-day life, and the gym then sort of top side out, because it is good to have that more vigorous exercise. It's still important, and you still have benefits from that you don't get from just not sitting. But I think I'm very big, and I think a lot of people are on just trying to embed as much physical activity into your life, and that way, when you can't work out every day, you're still going to get most of the benefits.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that seems pretty cool. And so one person is mentioning something again about your audio. Maybe it's too close, maybe it's too far. I don't know.
Move it away now?
People in the chat let us know.
Is that better? Sorry, this is a really old mic.
Yeah, it sounds okay to me at this point. Yeah, they say it's better. Okay, sweet. So my next question then. So actually, this you almost made it sound kind of good now. It's like, well, those of us who maybe are too busy to make it to the gym very often won't necessarily die for that reason if we can incorporate these other things. But what about for weight loss? So that's sort of a different can of worms. What's your take on that?
Again, I'm going to say that nobody knows for sure just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But there are lots of studies showing that sedentary behavior in and of itself is still a big risk factor for obesity. Not necessarily because you're not burning calories when you're sitting, although that's a part of it, but also there have been a lot of studies showing that various sedentary behaviors increase your hunger and your food intake, even though you're not burning any calories. So if you're playing computer games, working on a computer, if you're watching television, all these things actually increase your food intake and increase your hunger. And so they do it for some different reasons. Like TV watching is probably more that you're being exposed to food cues. You see a steak and it kind of makes you hungry. Things like working on the computer actually, because your brain uses glucose, when you're thinking hard, it causes glucose instability in your bloodstream, which causes hunger because you want to get those glucose levels back up, and so there you go, you eat more. So there are quite a few studies showing that the sitting too much is going to make you eat too much, and those go back even to the 1950s, really. So I think it's sort of different than exercise. Like, exercise is still important for burning calories, and also because people who exercise more tend to regulate their appetite better, whether that's just because they think I exercise today, I should eat healthy, or whether it actually reduces their appetite through some sort of hormonal thing. But I think just simply limiting the amount of time you spend sitting should also help you at least maintain a body weight, if not reduce your body weight. And I apologize for being such a convoluted answer. That was very much a grad student answer.
No problem. I'm actually... I'm going to pause this 1 second. I'm having a bunch of people confused on Twitter about how to watch the show, so I'm going to So yeah, that was a little bit of a grad student answer, and but I wanted to sort of like dig into this a little bit more because I don't know, a lot of people that are sort of interested in this stuff read Gary Taubes' stuff, and those of you who don't know, Gary Taubes or whatever, however you say his name, he wrote Good Calories, Bad Calories, and he wrote Why We Get Fat, and his like sort of chief tenet is that like our weight homeostasis, like basically we maintain our same weight, that has nothing to do with anything except, so basically he says like you can't ever exercise to like lose weight because it just makes you more hungry. You work up an appetite, so you eat more, and your body naturally regulates this, and what causes it is actually how much carbohydrate you eat, and he sort of takes exercise out of the equation. So it kind of sounds like you disagree with this, and I'd like to know what you think about his hypothesis. And I thought for him the most compelling data was the very controlled rat feeding studies, but obviously we're not rats, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
So I should preface this by saying that I'm only sort of tangentially following Gary Taubes, so if anyone's a devout follower, please don't bash me for getting something slightly wrong. But I think there's general consensus that refined carbs are bad. I don't think anyone will debate that. I think his argument that refined carbs are all that really matter, and that exercise and everything else you eat doesn't matter. I think you have to really ignore a lot of data to come to that conclusion. Like, there are some nifty things going on there with refined carbs, but I think he really takes it beyond the logical conclusion. And so with exercise, exercise is really good for weight maintenance. So it's really good to help people stop gaining weight and maintain the weight they're at. And when people are trying to lose weight, exercise is a really important component for keeping that weight off. And so there are a few reasons. One, you're burning calories, but also exercise seems to do a really good job of regulating appetite. And so there was a study back in the 1950s looking at people, how much they ate versus what job they did. And what they found is that people who did office work ate just a tremendous amount of calories, even though they weren't burning many. Whereas when you looked at anyone doing manual labor, the amount of calories they consumed and the amount of calories that they expended were really tightly regulated. So, and there's been a lot of stuff that's sort of backed that up. So exercise is good at maintaining weight. And for some people, exercise is really good at helping you lose weight. I mean, I can show you people in studies that I've been involved with that absolutely just lose an insane amount of weight through exercise alone. It's just not the norm. And so John Blundell's done a lot of really good work looking at exercise and appetite, and it seems like it's about 30% that you compensate for. So if you burn, 1,000 calories a day through exercise, somehow you're going to compensate and eat an extra 300 or so calories to compensate for that. But then you're still going to be, making a caloric deficit. And so over time, your body's going to, come to an equilibrium. And that's the same if you lose weight by diet. No matter how you lose weight, that's going to happen. But no, exercise is definitely important for weight loss. And this sort of meme going around that exercise makes you gain weight is it's not based on anything physiological that I've seen. It's not really anything that makes sense to me.
Yeah, in my experience, and this is just total personal anecdote, I didn't lose weight, or not very much, when I was like training for a marathon, which was like, I thought I would lose weight. But I've noticed that I lose weight when I do more subtle exercise differences. Like when I started walking to work. It's like a mile each way. So I'd add 2 miles of walking to my day. I dropped 3 pounds, and it's like, for me, that's like, I'm pretty small. Like that's a whole pant size, So I was like, woohoo. But that's the sort of exercise that it's like almost not even exercise. It's more like the not being sedentary stuff we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I was just curious your thoughts on that. But if exercise regulates appetite in a negative way, then he's totally wrong about his theory. So.
Yeah, and it depends on the situation, and it also depends on the person, because then there are also sometimes you think, well, I can eat that dessert, I can have that chocolate milk because I exercise.
Right.
And so there might be non-physiological things going on that people compensate in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of these things that it's not an absolute one or the other, and it varies tremendously from person to person. And the average is almost meaningless when it comes to appetite and exercise, because when you look at the graphs, there are some people that just lose insane amounts with exercise and some that actually gain weight with exercise. It's really all over the...
Oh, thank you.
But the
You're freezing. You're freezing up a little bit. I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. So you cut out at some point there. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
I think I got your point. I hope everyone else did as well. But you sort of trailed off at the end there. Okay, well, so I think what you were saying is that it just depends a lot on the person, and I totally that health halo. People have such a screwed up relationship with food and weight and exercise these days that if they do one good thing, they think they can do like 5 bad things, and they don't end up coming on top, and then they think that exercise doesn't work. But is there actually any data for does it matter like what kind of exercise you do in terms of weight loss? Like, for example, is cardio better than strength training? Is strength training better than cardio? Do you need both? Like, how does that work?
Honestly, when it comes down to it, the best exercise is the one that people enjoy. There's no sense, like there is no perfect exercise for anything. And so if you like doing a lot of strength training, then do strength training. If you like doing cardio, then do cardio. Like there are benefits to both. So it's good to mix up a bit of both, but really there's absolutely no benefit of fetishizing any specific exercise. If you're doing exercise, that's good, and you're going to have health benefits. And that's sort of the important thing also, that I think it's good for people to focus more on the behaviors than on body weight itself, because it's easy to control behavior, or at least easier. You can control how much you exercise, you can control if you eat healthy foods and eat a reasonable amount of food, but your body weight, that's an outcome. And so there are a lot of things affecting that other than your behavior. So if you're doing those healthy behaviors, you're going to be at lower health risk, regardless of everything else. So I think that's the important thing.
Absolutely, I love that message. And I actually wrote an article. I don't write very many exercise articles, but I did one earlier at the beginning of the year. When everybody sort of goes on their weight loss mission in January. And my main message in that piece was that people I talk to people all the time. They're just like, I don't like the gym, or I don't like working out, and this and that, and they make excuses. And they look at someone like me, and they're like, well, you're just different. You're just a kind of person who's different, who likes that stuff. And I didn't used to like going to the gym. It was a habit that I developed over time. Nobody's born with an innate desire to go to the gym. And the message of my article is, your goal shouldn't be to start going to the gym and lose 10 pounds. Your goal should be to start going to the gym until you like it. Go there and figure out what you like if you want to do that. And then once you're and the goal should just be consistency. And once you sort of have this consistent habit build up, then before you know it, you enjoy what you're doing. And then you can start focusing on specific goals. I want to bench press, this much weight, or I want to, cut my body fat and be in this contest, or I want to run a marathon, or whatever. But the first thing, that is important is that people develop a habit of health. So I love that message. But I did want to ask you about one.
And just to add to that,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm not a gym person either. I'm a distance runner, so I do not like going to the gym at all, because it's not something I'm good at. So I empathize with people who don't like going to the gym. And again, I think, like you say, establishing those healthy habits are good, but if people don't enjoy the gym, then look into finding something else they do enjoy, because there are a lot of things you can do, structured, unstructured. Just going for a walk with the dog and the kids, anything is good.
Absolutely. I have a friend who gets most of her exercise, she plays ultimate frisbee, and she plays all these different soccer games, and it's just, she's one of the most fit, healthy people I know, and she doesn't step foot in the gym. So there's definitely something to be said for that. And and it's cool because she also has a huge social group around it, which is awesome. So, but I did also want to ask you about something that has been getting a lot of press lately in terms of a type of exercise specifically for fat burning, and that's the high intensity interval training. And maybe you could explain to people what that is, and tell us whether or not that's all hype, or if it's actually something that we can. I got the impression that maybe it's not necessarily better than any exercise, but it takes less time, so maybe it's better. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, that's there's some cool research coming out there that suggests that for certain specific outcomes, like if you just want to increase your fitness, if you want to do certain things like that, then there's really high intensity training. So you're going like full out for 30 seconds, 2 or 3 times, or 4 minutes, 2 or 3 times. It kind of depends on the protocol, but it's all this really hard full out. Like you want to puke at the end, like balls to the wall as hard as you possibly can. And so it's basically what a lot of athletes do. I mean, that's like what most of my distance running track workouts would have been like, or like suicides for basketball players. And again, it's good for some things. So it's useful, but it's not really good for most people. Like if I look at my mother, or my friends' parents, or most of my friends, it's not something they're going to enjoy to go out, run for 2 minutes until they feel like puking. And then do that 2-3 times a week. Like that's just not something in research we say it's efficacious but not effective. Like it works great in theory, but not great in practice. And then again, I mean, say you're exercising and you're doing like 12 minutes of exercise a day. That's great, but that's like less than 1% of your waking hours. And again, the sedentary time and all these other things matter too. So there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But again, I think people sort of overly fetishize the workout of the month and sort of lose sight of the big picture, that just as long as you're exercising, that's good, and don't worry about the details, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I've been doing interval training. I wouldn't call it high intensity because I never feel like I want to puke, mainly because the only place I can really work out in the city where I live is at the gym, and I don't like doing it on the bike, the intervals on the bike, because I don't like sitting, actually. So I do the running, but I'm scared that if I run so fast that I want to puke, that I'll kill myself on the treadmill, because I don't really trust that thing. So I run medium hard, and instead of doing it 1 minute until fatigue, I do it 2 minutes, and then it still feels like fatigue. And in my experience, it's actually been pretty awesome. It made my short runs much easier. Once you start doing interval training, a regular slow run feels like a walk in the park, and you actually feel great after that kind of workout. I also feel great after the interval training. Like I said, I don't do it until I want to puke, and I finish up, and it's one of the few things I can do at the gym that actually makes me sweat, because it's just really hard for me to get super sweaty at the gym, although I enjoy that. And also, it makes me look great. It just puts all these great muscles on you, and that's why in my as a girl, I was always scared of doing strength training, thinking I would get all bulky, but it was just the opposite. Not until I started doing strength training was I finally happy with sort of my physique, even though I've always never been really overweight or anything. It just got put the curves in all the right places. So I like the high-intensity interval training, but yeah, like you said, I feel like it's more of a fitness benefit than necessarily a fat loss. But yeah, definitely big picture first.
Well, and it's good if you enjoy it, that's great, but I would say people, it's good to try, and if they like it, then great. And but if they don't like it, then I wouldn't lose sleep over it.
Yeah, good call. And we talked a little bit about this before, but we could put the formal name on it at this point. So you wrote a guest post for Summer Tomato a year or so ago about NEAT. So that's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is a fancy way of saying the calories you burn when you walk around doing stuff. Does that at all correlate with body weight or health or anything like that? I mean, obviously it helps reduce sedentary behavior, which you've already explained, but what about with weight?
So this is another one where there have been a couple really cool studies. So the guy who's done all this work, James Levine, he coined the term NEAT. And so it's basically the energy you burn while you're fidgeting and when you don't even notice what you're doing. And so he's done some cool studies where he's actually had people come in to his lab, and they lived there for, I think it was 2 months, and he overfed them by 1,000 calories a day. So at that rate, you're gaining 2 pounds a week if you did nothing to offset that. They weren't allowed to exercise; they just have to eat it, live in the lab. And so the crazy thing is that, as you might expect, I guess some people gained a tremendous amount of weight in that 2 months, and some people barely gained anything at all. And what really sort of accounted for this difference was that some people naturally increased their amount of meat. And so they were able to increase their energy expenditure enough to offset most of those extra calories they were were taking in, whereas other people weren't, and they just gained all the weight. And there have been some other studies by his group showing that that individuals with obesity tend to have lower levels of NEAT than individuals who are not obese. Now, the problem is that NEAT, the way they originally defined it, was that it's sort of this innate physiological movement that's sort of outside of your control. And you can probably tell, like, if you spend, I don't know, 2-3 hours in a meeting or at a conference, and the more you sit, the more you kind of start fidgeting and moving around, and that's sort of your body regulating your energy expenditure using NEAT. But it's harder to actually control that yourself unless you're doing something like using a standing desk or using one of these pedal machines under your desk like I do at work to sort of harness that NEAT. But it's sort of new, it's sort of nifty, it's probably not great for losing weight, but it's probably good for keeping weight off or helping to maintain a stable body weight.
I'm curious, where do you get this fancy pedal machine?
Oh, it's not fancy at all. It's I think it's made for people who are like undergoing rehab for lower body surgeries.
Oh.
So you can buy them at pharmacies and stuff. Mine, it's called a Deluxe Medical Peddler. I bought it for $30 through Canada Post. You can get it on Amazon.com. It's like 3 pieces of metal stuck together, and it's basically just 2 pedals on a base, and it fits under my desk, and there's no resistance. Like, it's not exercise, but it allows me to just slowly pedal all day.
I love it. I'm going to totally put that link up in the show notes, guys. Don't worry. Awesome. So as my last question, I feel like it's a good way to end. If you had just your number one piece of advice for those who want to stay healthy and control their weight with your specific field of expertise, what would your piece of advice be?
As much as I'm an exercise guy, I think probably the most important thing is to not drink your calories. There's just no way to out-exercise or outdo 500 or 600 calories a day that you're drinking, because liquid calories aren't filling. They boost your insulin levels. Just all sorts of bad things happen. So I think cutting out the liquid calories is a great start, and then exercise will help you maintain your weight. But exercise is going to be really good for health benefits, but don't get discouraged if the weight doesn't come off, because you're still going to have a lot of health benefits regardless of what's happening to your weight.
Right. Awesome. Great. So for all of you out there watching, if now we're ready to start taking some questions. So if you have any questions for me or Travis, and then you can go ahead and there's a little red Ask a Question button, and it would be awesome if you use that so that we could put the question up on the screen. Or if you want, you can also call in and ask, just chat with us. We would love to chat with you. Just make sure you have some little earbuds or something like that so that there's no feedback. But yeah, we'll just keep talking until you answer questions. Oh, but here they come. Questions start rolling in. Great. So, and in your question, you can sort of say who you want to ask it. Oh, this is a good question. I'm gonna give it to Travis, and so I'm gonna put you up there like that, and then go for it.
Cool. All right. So exercise frequency, duration. The current physical activity guidelines, I'm not sure what they are in the U.S. I believe you should be aiming for about an hour a day of exercise, 5 to 7 days a week. It tends to be in that range for most countries of the guidelines, and really that's a good thing to aim for. If you can be getting 30 to 60 minutes of exercise every day. Now that doesn't mean that it has to be going to the gym. It can be, if you walk to get a bus in the morning and that takes 10 minutes, then that's 10 minutes. If you can go for a 20-minute walk at lunch, there's 20 minutes. But you should be aiming for 30 to 60 minutes every day or most days of the week. And the other thing that you can do is aim for 10,000 steps a day. So if you have a pedometer, it costs $20. You hook it on your belt, and then if you're getting 10,000 steps a day, great. Try and boost that. And if you're not getting 10,000 steps a day, then try to aim for that. But it really should be an everyday thing.
Hi, I had a question. So when you the 30. So you said it doesn't have to be high intensity, and the entire thing can be virtually low intensity, and you'll still have benefit?
You'll get most of the benefits.
Okay.
So when you look at where most of the benefits are, it's going from being completely inactive to just slightly active. So if you're not doing any exercise right now, you drive to work, you take the elevator up to your office, you sit down all day, you drive home, then doing anything is going to reduce your health risk. And as you get fitter and fitter, you have to do more and more to get more benefits. So doing some intense exercise is always good. It's better to do intense exercise, but sort of anything is beneficial. And sort of a good way to tell how intense your exercise is, if you're able to sing a song while you're walking, then it's really low intensity. If you're able to talk but not quite sing, then it's sort of a moderate intensity. And if it's sort of like every single word you got to take a breath, then that's sort of a vigorous, a very high intensity exercise. So try and aim for the moderate and vigorous whenever you can.
I love that. That's such clear advice. Try to sing, see how you can do. I love that. All right, one more. I'll take the next question here. And go for it, Travis. Any suggestions for people with disabilities counteracting sedentary behavior?
So I get that one a lot, and I don't work in adapted physical activity, so it's one that I'm not as knowledgeable about. There have been some really cool studies actually looking at having individuals with different levels of spinal cord injury and just simply electrically stimulating their legs, and they do see some benefits. So the same sort of processes seem to apply, but I think sort of whatever level of exercise you can do is still something that you should aim for. So probably a physio or the other term, occupational therapist, might be able to find something that's sort of adaptable to your situation, and whatever you can do is going to be beneficial.
I think that's awesome. My dad complains about this all the time. Like, he has a bad knee, and he's like, I can't do anything, and I'm like, you have to. so his number one thing he does is take the dogs out and walk around with them, and he can't. He usually has to drive them to a destination because they're big German shepherds, and they'll pull him over. But he can take them out and let them out of the car, and then sort of walk around and let them go do their crazy stuff. So I think that's really important. Great question. All right.
And swimming can be really good for people with knee and hip problems because it takes a lot of the weight off. So I know for people that have certain problems, swimming can be really good, like aquasizing, and that can be a very good start for people.
Awesome. Good to know. All right, so we have another question here from Danny. How does one deal with the initial exhaustion during the transition from sedentary to neat and
actually,
active?
I had sort of a similar situation here. Sorry, Daria, can you hear me? You're freezing up.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you fine. Go ahead.
So I'm just going to wait a second because I don't know if anyone can hear this. Oh, I can hear you now. Okay, I'm fine. Okay, so so I actually found this. So I had this problem when Sorry, it keeps cutting out. I keep hearing you and then not hearing you.
Don't worry about me. Just go. Here.
So I'll start talking, and then you can let me know if it's not working. So I had this problem when I first started using my little pedal machine, actually, because the way I was sitting, I was leaning back, and so I was activating my core pretty much all day. So I had really sore abs and I think the best thing to do is just cut back if you get to that point, and especially you want to make sure that the things you're doing are still ergonomically correct. So do it in small batches, and same thing if you're using, like, if you're sitting on an exercise ball or something, just do it for a half hour, 45 minutes, see how it feels, and sort of build up to it, because there's no sense jumping in and hurt.
All right, you froze up a little there for me. Oh, there you go. Okay, you're back. Sorry. So, sorry about that. I think vocal gets a little overwhelmed when we start switching shots and adding questions and stuff. But the last thing I heard was that you should just start slowly and build up to it. Did you have anything to add to that?
I use my little pedal machine because it's just way cheaper and way more compact, so it fits in my small student office. And then at home, I just use my stand-up desk because I can't afford a treadmill. But no, I think it's great. Again, it probably won't help you burn enough calories to lose much weight, but I think it's still beneficial for health reasons. I think it's absolutely something good if you can do it. I'm gonna try and answer. So there is a relationship between genetics and obesity. The way some people describe it is that genetics loads the gun and then environment pulls the trigger. And so what they mean by that is that our genes haven't changed that much in the past 100 years, even though obesity rates have gone up, several times. And so it seems that some people are more at risk of obesity than others. But then if you're not if you're not doing certain behaviors, you will at least reduce your risk of becoming obese. So no one's predestined to absolutely become obese or get heart disease or cancer or any of these other things. So
Sorry about that, everyone. We lost the last teeny little bit of video there due to some technical error, but thank you so much for joining us, and huge thanks to Travis for sharing all his wonderful information with us this week. The next episode will be on weight loss tips and tricks, and that'll be on Tuesday, May 24th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to participate, sign up at tinyletter.com/summertomato. Hope to see you there.